It is time for StreetWise with former chief of the New York City Sheriff's Department, former chief of the Seagate Police Department, retired New York City detective, Time Warner Public Access Media Award, Joe Franklin Super Excellence in Broadcasting Memory Lane Award, New York Veteran Police Association StreetWise Productions, host of StreetWise, Mr. Lou Telano.
Good evening. Welcome to StreetWise. This is my fourth week here, and I'm having fun at the Paradise Studios, Strong Island TV. So I was just told this evening I got a good Facebook crowd, so that's good to hear. I have some interesting calling guests this evening. I am going to introduce her before she gets on the line because she's limited. She's running to another show, and I'll tell you who she is. And I'll touch base. I'll just remind you when she calls in. It's Dr. Alveda King. She is the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King, the civil rights leader. And I'm going to ask her this because it's not even, nobody mentions this, that her dad himself was a famous civil rights leader, Reverend A.D. King. But for some reason, we don't talk about it, and I'll ask her why, although she might get mad at me because she'll say, hey, we do talk about it. But usually it's her uncle, Dr. Martin Luther King, and her. She's represents the, so I guess you can call it the King dynasty, because she's the person that talk shows want to talk to and to comment on a lot of these different things. And she's a little controversial because she is a big supporter of President Donald Trump, and she says they have a lot in common. And I'll ask about that. And one of the things that I know they do have in common is the pro-life, right to life, and anti-abortion. So we'll touch on that when she calls in. She's, by the way, which I was surprised myself. I didn't realize it. And she was a former representative in the Georgia House. She was a senator. I didn't know that. So for some reason, certain things you don't know, but you know about the person. So she was in government as well. She's what they call a guardian for the King family legacy, I should say. So we'll just wait for her. She'll be calling in, and I want to just mention a couple of things. What she does, she's with the Priests for Life. That's pro-life again, anti-abortion Christian organization, but you don't have to be. It's a Christian, but it's the head of it is a priest. It's pretty much of a Judeo-Christian that used to be running our country one time. If you're going to talk about religion, we lost the Judeo-Christian values, and I'm going to touch on that. I'm going to touch on that with my second guest, who's Christy Boyle. She has several books out in regard to 9/11. Interesting guest because we don't realize now what's going on in our school system and with this new generation. They don't actually talk about Ground Zero, 9/11. I didn't know that. She says they just don't discuss it in the school. So you have children that were not born during 9/11. It was only 18 years ago. To me, that's only 18 years ago. But you have someone who's 20 years old, they were 2 years old, even 7 years old, and they may not have a clue about Ground 11, what happened down there during 9/11 when we had this terrorist attack on the United States of America. So she is pretty much talking about that, how we lost that in our school system. But by the way, we also lost prayer in our school system. We also lost Pledge of Allegiance in our school system. So it really doesn't surprise me. They're pretty much politically correct in our school system. So that shouldn't surprise you either. Our school system seems to be leaning towards the left, and especially in our colleges when they teach our young students, they're sort of socialist, extremely liberal, and if you're 19 years old, 20 years old, you actually believe what you're being taught, and I can understand why. So, and they avoid talking about certain things, and they pretty much also give a bad light on this country and in a negative fashion. But meanwhile, they want to be teachers or educators or professors in our in our school system, and they're angry for whatever reason. They have an angry approach to what they teach, and this, of course, the kids catches on down the road. Again, she should be calling in. If she doesn't call in, hey, my other guest will call in, but I do want to remind you, Alveda King. She also, by the way, speaking of educators, she's also college professor. There's a lot of things we don't know about Dr. Alveda King that we'll talk about. Hopefully we have the time, because she is pretty much wanted all over. And she did give me a call and said, Lou, I'd love to call in again, because she was my guest, because I'm on every Saturday on WGBB, 1240 a.m. out here on Long Island. And she was my guest there. And by the way, this past Saturday on 12:40 a.m. at 4 o'clock, I had the Nassau County Police Commissioner, Pat Ryder. I almost forgot his name. So anyway, he was a great guest, and I did ask him a question. I said, as the police commissioner, what's your thoughts on what happened with the police officers in New York City being followed and throwing water on the cops? And he said, would not be accepted here in Nassau County. Great. That was a great answer. He said, it's not acceptable, and it dare not happen here in the county. So that was great. So, it's a Police Commissioner O'Neill in New York City, he sort of turned it around. He said he commend the police officer, commend them, and for not taking any. How do you commend somebody? Because really, it's an assault on a police officer for their restraint, is what he said. That would never happen in my time when I was a cop working by the way, in the same area in Brownsville, where one of the cops was doused with water, or two cops actually, and the other incident was up in Harlem. That would definitely not happen, I can tell you that. But I can understand, and today in New York City, police department and the mayor, de Blasio, he pretty much tied the hands of the police officers. And this is what I heard. I don't know what's factual, but I did hear commanding officers in certain precincts at roll call address the police officers and said, hey, listen, if you get harassed out in the street, ignore it. He said, because it's a hot summer, we don't want to cause any riots. That means my guest is calling in. So is she on? My guest on here? Yes, Dr. Alveda King.
Yes, I'm Alveda King.
Oh, I know you, Alveda King. Alveda King, this is Lou Telano. I had you last year. I got to be careful when I say I had you, but you were my guest last year. Just thank you for calling here on StreetWise, same show. I'm going to get right into it. Now, obviously, we pretty much all know that you are the niece of the civil rights icon leader, Dr. Martin Luther King. But many of us don't know that your dad was also a civil rights leader, A.D. King. Why is it that we don't talk too much about your dad? At least I don't hear it anyway. As a civil
and that's
rights,
okay.
Leader.
If you ever read the Bible, you have Moses and Aaron. Aaron was the brother of Moses, and he supported his brother. You hear more about President Brother Bobby Kennedy, and they were both killed. So that kind of...
Oh, okay.
But my dad was a civil rights leader
in
his own right, and we miss him dearly. He was killed in 1969. His brother was shot, and then Dad was killed and thrown in a swimming pool. So, yeah.
Oh, was that the same year? Your uncle was 1968.
Your voice is falling away a little bit. I'm sorry.
Yeah. They just right after each other, I would think, right? Wasn't that close? Your uncle and your dad both died pretty close together?
Well, Martin was killed in 68. My dad was killed in 69.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It was a year before. Oh, I got to talk about your books. Your books are folks, you have to buy Dr. Levita's. By the way, Dr. Levita, of course, is an evangelist and a pastor. I don't know what to call her, but pastor,
Evangelist
reverend,
Alvita is good.
evangelist. Oh,
Alvita
you love
itself
it.
is good. That's fine.
Yes, you folks, her books are great. King Rules, King Truths. How can dreams survive? Sons of Thunder. I like this one. I don't want to be your man. I want my own. But that was back in 1995, right?
Yeah,
So
that was one of my first, and yeah,
uh, I know.
I
But
think it was my second maybe third. I don't know,
oh,
but yeah, it was a long time ago.
but you know what? You also
And
surprised.
then I have a few albums out, few music albums, the most recent Tender Moments, along with God.
Wow. I have to tell you this, folks. She is a representative with Priests for Life, and that's a great organization. They're in Florida, but they're all over the country. And what I like is their platform is they are a voice for the unborn. Tell us about that, Dr. Vita King.
I am Director of Civil Rights for the Unborn with Priests for Life.
Priests for
We're based in Florida. Priests for Life is a Catholic organization, a strong voice for the sanctity of life, especially the children in the womb. The poor, the sick, and the elderly are included, but that baby in the womb. And I've been there since 2005. So it's 14 years.
Wow.
Civil Rights for the Unborn.org.
We just had a terrible controversy in regard to the unborn, and with the late-term abortions, which I call murder, because it is murder, because it's a living human being. How did that affect you going into to when the baby's actually alive? Not the last semester, or you could call it. What's your thoughts on that, Evangelist?
Well, I actually experienced 2 abortions and a miscarriage because of
know.
the damage from the abortions. And at the time, we didn't know all of the things that we know about abortion today. I repented when I was born again in '83, and the Lord has forgiven me. I'm looking forward to meeting my children face to face in heaven. I look forward to that. But abortion is damaging, of course, to the child. It almost always kills the child. You do have some survivors of abortion that live through an abortion and are here to proclaim the truth of it. But it hurts the mother. It damages the father, stability, the family, the community, and a nation. So abortion just isn't good. But you can, as I say, I'm at civilrightsfortheunborn.org, and you can certainly find me there and find more about it there.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. Now, what was that controversy when some high-ranking politician had sort of made an analogy of you could kill them now, referring to actually pretty much African-American children, because you're going to kill them again down the road, including the electric chair? I know you got involved in that controversy.
Yeah, it seemed as though he was implying they're kind of just throwaways, and nobody should be that. We're all human beings, one blood, one race. We're not separate races, and we must have compassion towards each other. So I believe that it's very important that we care about our youngest in the womb. That's going to be very, very, very important.
You said compassion, and I like a quote that you made, is that this particular person has misplaced compassion.
Right. Misguided, misplaced compassion.
Misguided, misplaced.
It absolutely is.
Right. So I know you got heavily involved in that, and it pretty much was happy to see it and happy to hear it. We were talking. Is that a Democratic leader in Alabama? Am I correct on that? Who made that analogy in regard to?
No, I don't think. I think he was Elijah Cummings is in Baltimore.
Oh, well, no.
Yeah.
I mean in Alabama. Who made that analogy about you kill him now because you're going to kill him in the future anyway? Like you said, like the misplaced compassion. Was that?
I thought that was Cummings, but it might have been in Alabama as well.
Yeah, I thought it was. Yeah. I thought it was. Okay.
It could be. So many things are happening at this time. I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
Oh no. So, but I do have to commend you because you just mentioned you had two abortions.
Your voice comes
Two.
up and then it goes
Oh,
down a
okay.
little
I
bit.
know
I
that. I'm
don't.
sorry about that. I know you mentioned that you had two abortions, but we got to commend you. You have 6 children, correct?
I have 6 living children
6
and
living
3 in
children.
heaven,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
all together. And right now I have 11 grandchildren. I'm so blessed.
Oh,
I'm so grateful.
oh my God. Right. So,
Hmm.
do you agree with me that these late-term abortions is, from my background as a detective here in New York City, uh, we would arrest somebody for murder if they killed a young baby like that. I don't know why they don't call that murder now. They still call it abortion. I don't know how we got lost in that, because it's a.
It's just a heavy campaign and heavily financed and marketed. People begin to accept it, and so, but that is being reversed. People are waking up. I think when we had the governors in Virginia and New York say that babies could be born alive, but if you intended to abort them, you just go ahead and keep them comfortable and let them die.
I know that was
And so
horrible.
people were like totally shocked, and so that gave us the opportunity to say, "We've been trying to tell you." Oh yeah, oh
And
yeah.
yeah, Dr.
Well,
Vita.
do you have one more question? I'm going to have to.
Oh, I know you
We
got a
have.
book on this. Okay. Do you? I got to touch on this. People don't realize you also did a cookbook. Surprisingly,
I have a cookbook,
you have a
Gigi's
cookbook.
Home for the Holidays cookbook. Books like that in my children's book, I write for my family and my children. But then we go ahead and publish them because people a lot of times say, "Oh, we didn't know you could cook. Why don't you write that recipe?" And so it ended up being a cookbook, a King family cookbook about our traditions and our meals.
Now, I think, by the way, before I forget, Burgess Owens sends his regards. He was my guest a little while ago, short time ago.
Oh, okay,
So when
okay.
I says I'm going to have the evangelist, Dr. B. the King on, he says, make sure, please, Lou, you give him my love. And I'm glad that I didn't forget that,
That's
you know.
great. Well, hello back, and God bless
Oh,
you. And
yes,
wow.
you guys are two in the same direction, and how and we both got to bring this Judeo-Christian back, and we lost that, so somehow. Now, I got this is another important question. You sort of keep the King legacy alive. Is that your job in life? Is that what you were
I'm a
assigned to?
guardian. I'm the oldest of
Yes.
my generation in the family. So I am a guardian of the King
Wow.
family legacy. And I tell people about the principles of faith, hope, and love that sustained us as a family throughout the ages.
Wow.
So, and then my book, King Rules, talks about that. You can find that in King Rules and also in King Truth.
King, I'm going to mention that when you hang up, because I know you have to run. I'm going to remind the audience about your books and and what they are in regard to. Yes, you're the guardian of the King family legacy. That's the important thing. And
Yes,
with the
sir.
Priests for Life, I just want to touch on that. I think Pavone is the father who really pretty much is the head of it. Is that his name? Dr.
That is right. Frank Pavone,
Frank,
Father Frank Pavone.
yes. But just quickly, I know you got on. What's your role with that, aside for speaking for the unborn? What you?
Director of Civil Rights for the Unborn. I
Oh,
do
great.
research and speaking, and I work with my associates to inform, educate, and activate the public about the sanctity of life.
You know, speaking of thank God, we have to thank God because we have people like you that make sure that we keep the sanctity of life. Evangelist
Well,
Dr. Elvita King, thank you for being on Streetwise.
thank you. God bless.
God
Bye.
bless again. Bye bye. Great lady. I know. I know she. I got a call, and that might be my second guest. You did call in time. Wow. Hello, this is Lou Telano. I guess you are Christy.
Yes, hi Lou.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Now, I hope I pronounced your last name right because we didn't get a chance to really talk about that. Anyway, Christy Candon Boyle. Did I pronounce your last name correct? Boyle?
Boreal.
Boyal, right? I want to make sure I
Yep,
got that
that's
right.
right.
Because it's spelled like, I think is that French?
It's French Moroccan.
Oh, okay. French Moroccan. Bour, folks, Yal. And then, by the way, Christy is a former news reporter. She's an author. We'll talk about her books in a moment. She's an accomplished communications and marketing strategist. Wow, she's got these great books. And what we have in common is, see, I'm a cop family, and Christy Boyal is a New York City Fire Department family, and we're going to talk about that. But I do have to touch on this, which is really the most of our conversations that, and you brought this to my attention because people don't really realize what I'm going to say, folks, is that in our school system now, because it's 18 years ago, ground zero, 9/11, and our kids are in school, are not taught, or not telling the facts or whatever happened down there. Is that correct, Christy? Say it in your words. How the hell, is this lacking in our education system right now about what happened at 9/11?
Well, Lou, we have a whole generation now of kids who know next to nothing about that day, and it's for a lot of reasons, which I can explain. But the reality is whether or not 9/11 is taught in school is solely at the discretion of administrators and individual teachers. And so as you might imagine, that means there's widespread variation across states, across the whole United States.
So in your book, you talk about, was your granddad a retired fireman?
My dad is
Your dad.
a retired firefighter who responded to Ground Zero.
Right.
We lost many of the men that I grew up with.
Wow.
He lost many, many of his friends. He was a first responder and one of the many people who helped rescue the last man out of the ruins of the World Trade Center alive.
Amazing. Folks,
Yeah.
we lost 343 firemen at that time, and we lost, I think, another 200 as a result of the illness. Most recently, just since 9/11, is it 200 that more firemen that we lost, Christy, since that date related to 9/11?
Yes, that's exactly right. And it seems like that number is climbing day by day.
Yes.
We lost nearly 3,000 that day across all of the sites that were impacted, and
Right.
since then, more than 2,350 people who were part of the World Trade Center Health Program have died, and the very sad that there are 95,000 people with the World Trade Center Health Program, and if you can believe that number is huge. More than 49,000
Right. We
have
just,
one or more 9/11 related illness.
yeah. You and I
Continue
spoke,
to
yeah,
see the number of people that lose their lives.
And you and I talked about that. Thank God they just extended this victims compensation fund in regard to all first responders that were down at 9/11. So, like Christy Boyle just said, we're still losing people, and it's going to continue. And what we did touch on this is that young people that were there, young first responders, they were single, they got married, and they carry this illness that occurred while they were down there. Their children are getting it. So this bill, thank God, it was called the Zadroga bill because it was named after a retired New York City detective who died from cancer as a result of being down at 9/11. So this is a compensation that was just approved by Congress and the House, and we're just going to go to. Did you know if the president signed that bill yet, Christy?
He didn't. He did. He did.
He did finally sign, yeah. And that continues compensations, and we lost 37 Port Authority cops. We lost 24 New York City cops, but the biggest, like Christy Boyle said, was 343. If I'm not mistaken, that's almost 1/3 of the fire department at that time.
That's correct.
Yeah, yeah. My God. So
and then if you think about it, and since then another 200, and there are so many more that we know are sick and suffering. So it's an extraordinary number. And what I talk to people about is, there are a number of people who think 9/11 is a day in our history, and it is in fact a day in our history. But it's not just that. It's a day that is continuing to take lives.
I'll talk about your books in a second, but why do you think that's lacking in our school, discussing exactly what occurred out there in Why do you think that's happening? You said a moment ago, but I want to see if I can get a clearer idea. You think this is an intentional, or you just don't want to talk about the educators? Is this widespread?
It is widespread, but what it is it's a variety of things, Lou, and that's what's tough about it. You know, there are some people who say 9/11 is a complex and complicated matter, and there's already a lot in the curriculum. There's another faction that says it should be taught in the higher grades, not necessarily in the lower grades. And, you know, to a degree, I understand, because it depends how you're going to explain it and how you're going to teach it, right? You know, to 7-year-olds, what do we want them to take away? And that's very much how I approach my work. It's to a 7-year-old to 11-year-olds. They shouldn't be, you know, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and not have an idea of what 9/11 is. Wow. And I will tell you that there are many kids across this country who have no idea what 9/11 is. Wow. And, you know, many kids that do know about it learned about it at home. At the same time, there are some great teachers across this country who are true patriots and are teaching and doing the right way and helping kids to understand, bringing people into the classroom like me. So there's just a lot of variation, Lou, and it really depends on where you are and what teacher you get and what administrator you have. And I don't think 9/11 is something that teaching children should be left to chance whether or not kids are taught about it. And so you're leaving it to chance that it will potentially get taught in some cases. And I will tell you, I've heard of instances where a single parent tells a teacher, I don't want you talking about that with my child in the room. And then an entire class misses out on hearing about it and learning about it. And so there's a lot of variation. There are a lot of different reasons. And really, I just say they're all just a lot of excuses. Because at the end of the day, I believe if there are enough people out there that feel as strongly as I do, and I know there are because I am encountering lots of them, then make sure it happens in your own home. Yeah. And use these books as vehicles to help achieve that. You know, for years I said, why is this happening? Why is it happening? And I started looking and it's like one reason and another reason and another reason and another reason. But really, they're just a lot of excuses. And so I thought, maybe there really isn't something foundational enough that can help. And so that's why I created these books and wrote them the way I did. They're based on true events, real people, real individuals that have experienced this, and a family who has a 9/11 first responder who's the grandfather, who's explaining it to his grandchildren for the first time, along with a grandmother who volunteered, both of whom have 9/11 related illnesses. So I thought, what better way to bring this to kids than to really tell these true stories in loving, caring ways, and to help the kids to understand that they have to ask questions, because real heroes, they usually don't boast about what they do. There are everyday heroes all around us, but you really have to ask questions and be inquisitive, because they're not the ones shouting about themselves from the rooftops about how great they are. They're the ones who seldom talk about themselves and are embarrassed to talk about themselves because they feel like it's not about them, right? You know these people. You come from, you know, the police force, and your sons do as well. So I say kids need to be inquisitive, and especially about this day. And I will tell you that the kids that I talk to who don't know anything about that day want to know more and more when they start to talk to me, which is really refreshing, and it makes me really hopeful that we can make an impact, and we can make an impact one by one, tens, dozens by dozens, thousands by thousands, however this is going to play out. I'm just happy and grateful to provide the vehicles that will help to enable people to have the discussion with children and to be able to help the children to get a foundation before they do get into the higher grades and really start to dig deeper into the issues that resulted from 9/11.
You know, that's a good point you brought up. The heroes don't want to talk about. We just seen that recently on the not celebrating, but acknowledging the 75th anniversary of the Omaha Beach, Normandy invasion in World War II. There were young kids there with 19 years old on the beach, and I want to go into, but a close relative of mine never made it off the beach at 18 years old. So at that time, and
I'm sorry to hear that.
at that time. So, but you notice that the World War II veterans that are still around, when they spoke to them, it was like pulling teeth to get them to talk about it. Only recently, the survivors are starting to talk about it, and we didn't realize what they went through. Many of them never got off the beach. Many of them actually drowned in the water. They couldn't even get to the beach with all the gear they were wearing, with the way the water was. It was just, and at 19 years old, they had to go through this. So, and took, many, which we know, so many of them passing away each day. And but that was a good point. They are heroes, and to get them to talk about it is amazing. So. But look, we got you to talk about what happened at 9/11. By the way, folks, correct me if I'm wrong. I know you have 3 books, and if I miss a book, let me know. My Buddy's Heroes, Remembering Heroes, Courage and Tribute. So obviously there's a common denominator where it's pretty much connects into what we're talking about on your 3 books. Absolutely. Wow.
So in my Buddy's a Hero, and I didn't even know it. That's the first book of the series, and that's my father's account of 9/11 as he explains it to his grandchildren for the first time.
Wow.
So the kids learn what happened that day, what it was like, what he saw when he got there, how did he feel, was he scared, what was running through his mind, and they learned that their grandparents lost a lot of their friends on that day. But the story unravels because the kids are curious and they ask a lot of questions, because my father's not the type to talk. And going back to your earlier point, Lou, part of the issue is, for people who lived this and experienced it, talking about it takes you right back to that moment. And it hurts. And I know what that feels like. So, and for people like my dad, other first responders, I can't even imagine, people like you who were down on the pile, I can't even imagine what it must be like, because I wasn't on the pile, and I know how I feel and how sad I feel inside. And so when I think about our war veterans who also don't talk about it, I also think part of it is what I mentioned before, that it's the fabric of the individual, right? These are people who say, I didn't do anything special. I just did what anyone would have done. But we all know that that's not true. We all know that the efforts were extraordinarily heroic, and more than many of us will ever be able to say we've achieved. So that's the first book. The second book, Remembering Heroes, the kids really want to learn more, and they don't understand why they haven't heard about this yet, and especially since their family has such a personal connection to it. And so they ask their grandparents if they can attend the 9/11 memorial with them, and they go, and it's a memorial at the FDNY's Rescue Company 1 in Manhattan. And while they're there, they learn about the nearly 3,000 that we lost on September 11th. They learn about the 343 members of the FDNY, and they learn about the 11 heroes from Rescue Company 1. They learned that the people that we lost, that we call heroes that day, they weren't heroes just because they died that day. They were heroes because of how they chose to live their lives. They were heroes because of everything they did in their life, not just because of that moment that took their life. And so they start to understand the concept of everyday heroes, and then they actually see them in action. And I don't know if you're aware of this, Lou, but to this day, people reenact in Manhattan, where the first responders went in and out of Ground Zero. They reenact what they were doing for first responders back then, and that's lining the streets, holding up signs, that said, "God bless America," "Thank you," "God bless our heroes," and waving American flags. And there's a small group of people that still do that to this day, and the family got to experience that and see it. And I know my father, when it first happened, it took his breath away. And it still does today. So in the second book, the kids experience the memorial service, learn about the people that fell, and also see how people paid tribute, the everyday heroes. And I say it like that because people who were standing there thought that they were paying tribute to the fallen and also the rescuers and the first responders. And I will tell you that the first responders that I know that experienced these people all felt that it was they were everyday heroes for them. And so, you don't have to be, the action doesn't have to be big and bold, right? It can be a simple gesture that makes you a hero to somebody else. And I think that's a concept that kids today need to understand more, and that we need to make them more aware of. And so that's a very important message that comes with the second book, Remembering Heroes. And in the third book, that's 9/11 Courage and Tribute, the family visits very special places created to remember and honor those we lost on 9/11. The grandkids learned that the largest water evacuation in our nation's history took place on 9/11. That's not something many people talk about, but that's absolutely true. And it only happened because everyday heroes answered the call for help. When the Coast Guard made the radio call, the boaters who were in the area or anywhere near did everything they could to get to Lower Manhattan and help to rescue more than 500,000 people off of the island of Manhattan,
right,
to safety. And that's another big learning about that event that not a lot of people talk about. But the kids visit very special tributes that were created, and they also learned that 9/11 is continuing to take lives. Many have lost their lives since that day, and they realized it because they were visiting in Staten Island postcards, which is the memorial for people who lived on Staten Island who lost their lives. And over at the water's edge, separated from the actual memorial, is an area that's covered in granite, like at the railing is covered in granite, and there are a number of names. And the names are the names of people who have since died thanks to 9/11 related illnesses. And so they realized that the impact of that day isn't over. It's continuing.
Yeah, we keep adding names on those walls, by the way, Krista. You know that, and it's not over, just like you said.
We do.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, a lot of people unaware that there was an evacuation, like wartime, and boats came in there. People were jumping in the water. People don't even realize that you panic. Obviously, jumping out of the windows was terrible. I didn't see that, thank God. I just saw it. I just saw it on. Thank God I wasn't there when that happened, because I wouldn't want to see that. As much as I've seen as as a correction officer and a cop in New York City, I wouldn't want to see that. And I'm glad I wasn't there at that time. I came after.
I understand.
Yeah, so
it's terrible.
It was. I wouldn't want to be there. Of course, I've close friends of mine I lost there that were cops and went to the fire department. There were firemen that I knew. All of us knew somebody. People I knew from Merrill Lynch, and that worked there in the building. So it seemed like everybody knew someone that affected 9/11. I was just talking to a young, believe it or not, New York City detective, and he's 27 years old. So you think about 18 years ago, so he was 9 years old. So. And he's a New York City detective, and he was asking me, I didn't even realize it. We were at a police meeting, and he was saying, Lou, you were down there. What really happened there? You try to get more details. And I'm saying, look at this. And he was saying, you have young firemen like that obviously they would know because they're in a firehouse. So that's, I don't know do they really talk about that in the firehouse? And I'm not sure what they do, but like you just said, a good point is that even people that are like first responders today, like police officers and firemen, were very young at that time, and they're unaware, so...
Absolutely.
It's just...
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I know a lot of people who I learned just from the work that I've been doing, some stories I've never heard before. And I just, it's an event that you tend not to talk about unless somebody brings it up, and it takes you right back to the day. It hurts. So I know it's hard for people to talk about, but I hope after 18 years they can start to. We have a whole generation of kids. People are starting to have, people who were young, like the man you just mentioned. Maybe he's starting to have his kids, the grandchildren that some of the first responders have today. There are so many stories, Lou, to tell, and that's why I felt so like I had to do this, because I think it's important that we bring some truth to this, and that we make sure that the true stories are the ones that are getting told. There are lots of stories out there, but there aren't many stories out there that are really based on true events, real people, and helping to explain a situation to kids.
But
and even I have to tell you, there are adults who read my books who say, "I can't believe I didn't even know that. I had no idea."
Yes.
So, and I think that's part of the issue. It is such a complex issue. It's so big. There are so many different aspects of it. But I felt like I had where I started is where I needed to start, because it lays just a basic foundation that we can build on, and branch into the other issues that should be talked about in later years.
Well, Feynman took the blunt of it. Like you mentioned, Rescue 1, if I'm not mistaken. Rescue 1, you could probably walk to the World Trade Center. That's how close Rescue 1 was to the World Trade Center, on 9/11. So Feynman, that their engine company or hook and ladder company were close by. Many of them, of course, are gone because they were close by. And it's just to imagine, we have discussions for years. Firemen, I'm sure you probably know about talking to your dad. And I always say, I'd rather go through a shootout than respond to a building that's on fire, And they say, are you kidding? I'd rather go into a building on fire than get involved in a shootout. But truthfully, I have to say this, a fireman is the toughest job in the city, and it is the toughest job because, look, it's not, cops lose their lives and we see it, one or two, but a fire like that, many of them were, I knew firemen many years ago. I think it was a company downtown that lost 12 firemen in one day. We thought that was terrible. The roof collapsed on a building, 12 in one day. And that was front page all over the country. And now we're talking about 343 that day. And like we talked about 200 since then, and not the end of it. So how can people get your books, My Buddy's Heroes, Remembering Heroes, Encourage and Tribute, Christy?
They can buy them on Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com. They're available through Ingram if anybody's interested in buying in bulk. And they're available in many other stores as well. FDNYshop.com. Purchases from that website support the FDNY. And also it's available in New York City Fire Museum and many other stores.
Now, why did you decide? I know you mentioned your dad was fireman, and he was there at the time. But why did you decide to get so involved in obviously doing 3 books? And I could imagine the interviews that you had to do. I could know it's Mike, and the stories that you heard, like you had mentioned earlier, were new to you that you didn't know of. So, what made you want to do that and write these 3 books? Because I'll tell you, if I was doing the first book and I start hearing these stories, I say, I don't want those memories. I don't want to think about it and even talk about it. So that actually, I have to say this, that takes courage for you to write these 2 books, folks. That takes courage, because imagine the stories that were told to her by probably people that were there and what people seen. So I have to ask is, why did you your time and probably money and energy to do these, to write these 3 books, Christy Boyle?
I wrote them because I saw the need. For years, I asked kids if they were learning about 9/11 in school, and for years, many told me they weren't. And it just was time. I always knew when you're as close to something as I was and my family was. You're always going to be connected to it. There are always things that we're doing. But when I saw year after year after year after year of asking questions, and, if the children were fortunate and got a great teacher, they learned about it, or got a great administrator, they learned about it, or happened to live in a very patriotic, part of the country, they learned about it. But otherwise, it seemed to have been left to chance. And it's not something that should be left to chance. We can give kids a foundation that's loving, caring, informative, but not too detailed, emotive, but not traumatic.
Yeah.
And so that's why I did this, and what I really worked hard to bring balance to the books and bring a sense of love and the relationships. Because, between the relationships between grandchildren and grandparents, there's nothing that's off limits. It's all open dialogue and discussion with a lot of caring, a lot of love. Sure, there were some tears. There were some group hugs throughout the books. But I did it because I really saw the need. I see the need today. We're 18 years later, and I don't like where we are.
Yeah. Well, this is another, because I got several questions for you, but what was you mentioned the word traumatic before, and I was trying to give these educators some credit. Maybe they're not enlightening the kids about what happened on there because maybe they think it's too traumatic, maybe say for a 9-year-old or 10 or 11. But you think they have to know. But you think they have to know, so it's like a double-edged sword. In one way, I think they should know, and the other side, I think it may be traumatic. With you writing these 3 books, what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so I understand it, and that's what I took away from some of the discussions I had. It's interesting, Lou. People who are close to 9/11 and experienced it very close.
Yeah.
They don't remember it's not the horror that stands out to me from that.
Yeah.
But the people who didn't experience it closely, it's the horror that stands out. And so I do think that was part of it, where some people were like, "It's so horrific. How could you explain that to children?" And it's like, wait, we don't have to share all of the, the details of it, but we can give a sense for what happened and a basic foundation, and say that a lot of people were taken from us on that day, and it was a terrible day. The unthinkable happened. That's what happened. And a lot of kids, the way they react is, well, how did all these people know what to do? Like, how did the people who were everyday here, how did they know to try to help people and to get there? And how did they get there? And, they started asking a lot of questions like that.
Wow.
But it's like I said, it's about, being emotive, but, not making it traumatic, and really giving them a basic foundation and understanding. And I think that you get from, the main characters in their relationship really just an honest dialogue. And that's really what I wanted this to be. That's really what it is. But I worked hard to make sure that that's what it was. And in talking closely with the kids, and making sure that, there weren't questions that were off limits. And there was a lot of asking of, how do you feel? How did you feel? What did that mean? What did you see? Just to bring it to life. But I think I can tell you that I did my absolute best to make it as balanced as I could, informative but not too detailed, and really show people, kids that, what I remember from that day the most is the extraordinary heroism that I saw, and not just that day, but in the weeks and months that followed. The amazing stories, the outpouring of emotion, the unity across the United States of America. What a great message for kids to learn today, right? Because it's hard to imagine in today's world that could have ever happened, that we could have all come together around something so terrible, but it was so terrible we absolutely had to. Our resilience and our American spirit, I mean, that's what I recall most from that day. It was our darkest day, but my goodness overcame evil that day.
Right. We good point. We had unity for a while, but, we seem to lose that, in the last several years. And it's like like you'd mentioned, not only it's not taught in the schools, there are people that don't even talk about it. The politicians don't even talk about it. They could be running for office, and they don't bring that up. They don't discuss it. They both criticize first responders, mostly police, I have to say. But it's amazing, because it's mind-boggling for me. I got there 2 days later. I wasn't there. Thank God. Like I said, I wasn't there the first day. I came there late the second day. But talking to people that were there the first day was very traumatic for me to listen to it, so I did what I could, give out masks, give out water, and they had so many people on the pile, I couldn't get to the pile, so I was with my kids by way 2 cops, and that's what we were doing, giving out masks and water. So I was there.
People
but
doing anything they could to help, right? Anything they could to help.
And they were
whether
coming,
you were right in downtown Manhattan or you were elsewhere across the country.
Yes.
It was remarkable.
Christy Boyle, they actually came. They came from other places throughout the country to see what they could do, like you said, whatever they could do. It was just amazing. But you know what's sad?
Absolutely.
It's sad that I was hoping that this country would be brought together, and it's pretty much divided now. Not to get political, but we lost that unity that we had for a while. And I just have to commend Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who I know personally because I worked for him. People don't realize a lot of close friends. The fire department priest, which your dad probably knows very well, who he was given last rites to someone that was dying when the body fell on him and killed him. That's a terrible story, That's
right, Father Michael Judge, absolutely,
exactly.
Terrible story.
Yeah, he was given last rites, and that's how he was killed, and the body just fell on him or jumped, one of the jumpers, as they say, out of the windows and killed him. Very close friend. Oh, I knew him, but very close friend to Rudy Giuliani. Rudy was there, and he was in shock when he was told all these people that he knew. I knew one unit in particular was emergency service guys, New York City PD, that used to hang out. They would park. I was the chief of the Seagate Police, and they would keep their rig, as they call it, parked in Seagate. There was 4 of them, a sergeant and 3 cops, like emergency service. All of them were gone,
Yeah,
So
it's terrible.
Yeah.
I remember my father. I was so worried about my father.
I
As you might imagine, I was so worried because after I told him what had happened, he hung up the phone and raced to get there. And people ask me, well, were you upset that he was going there? And I think when you're an FDNY, NYPD, whatever whatever the organization is, like, this is just what has to happen. I knew if my father, God forbid, was there, I would have wanted his friends to have gotten there. Yeah. So I expected he would go there, and I needed him there because so many of the people we knew and loved were there.
Wow.
Right? And so, but when I think about it, and when I think back, and from when I told him to when I get there, I was so worried about him. But I remember one simple statement he said to me weeks later. I just kept asking him, Dad, are you okay? Like, you're not talking about it. You're not anything. And I know you're dying inside. You're walking around, but you're dying inside. What? Are you okay? And he said, I'm all right, Chris. I just keep going to all the same places, and all the spaces and all the voices are different. I thought, wow,
Christy,
imagine that.
Your dad,
you lose almost everyone you know.
Your dad will never have to say this. He'll never be okay. I hate to tell you, but
I know.
I'm sure you know that.
He's never been okay.
It's
completely impacted our lives.
It's impossible.
It's completely impacted our lives, and not just like the trauma of it, but the illness. He has illnesses.
Yeah.
My mom has illnesses, and every day you're watching more and more of your friends get diagnosed with this or that, or this one passed and that one passed, and you're grieving still. I think there's some survivor guilt because you lost the people that you were so close to. And then you're like, okay, well, I'm here, but why am I here and they're not here, right? So none of us have ever been the same since that day. At least I know people close to me. We've never been the same since that day. Yeah. And that's why it's so hard for me to understand how it can be a day that isn't talked about as widely as I believe it should be with children of all ages. Because when we're not here, who's going to talk about it?
Do you lecture? Do you go around talking about yourself? Are you invited to these schools? Or
Absolutely. Yes, great. Like I said, there are some wonderful teachers around this country. I am invited in. I have a number of things we'll be doing this year. My dad will be with me as well.
Do you want people to reach out for you? If you want to, if they may want you to discuss it, that's, some organization. If you do, you can gladly give out the contact information. If you do that.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. If there, you look, I'm doing this for the sole reason of increasing awareness to 9/11 in kids and to helping kids recognize everyday heroes all around them. And so if anybody is interested in having me speak or in speaking just with me, my website is, it's the name of my company, contextproductions.com. It's CONTEXT productions.com. And just, you can send me an email through there, and I will gladly reply, and I will reply quickly. So, feel free to contact me. Like I said, the whole reason I'm doing this is to increase awareness to 9/11 and to everyday heroes. And I just think there's more we need to do as a country.
You do. Thank you. Just quickly, the contact number again, because we have to winding down. Your contact number for the for our listening audience to reach you.
Yeah, so they can contact me through the website.
Right.
Is the best way for them to reach me.
All right, Christy Cameron Boyle, thank you. I'm going to ask you to come back on my radio show also as well. All righty?
Thanks so much, Lou. Thanks so much for having me. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And thank you for your sons as well.
All right. Give my love to your dad and your family, of course.
I will. Likewise, Lou. Thanks so much.
God bless you. Welcome. This is, folks.
God bless you as well.
God bless you. This is Lou Telano, and I'll catch you later.
It is time for StreetWise with former